Hi, I'm Sunny. In this Chat with Sarita episode, I speak to Sonlight's founder and president, Sarita Holtzman, all about how to find quality books. She discusses how we've identified Sonlight's summer readers in the past and how we're changing things up for the 2023 year. Summer reading is a fun and engaging activity, but especially when done collaboratively within our Sonlight Connections community. So listen in as we discuss different genres, selecting books you may not have time to read fully, and ways to get even your reluctant readers to listen in. It will pave the way for fun summer learning. You'll also learn all the ways you can share your literary finds with us over here at Sonlight. Hi, Sarita. Thank you for joining me again today. We are going to be talking, instead of about specific books, how to choose good quality books. So let's talk a little bit about our summer readers. For anyone who's been around in the past, they know that in the summertime, Sonlight comes out with some different collections that aren't part of our regular curriculum. So what has that process looked like in the past? How do you select those books? What are you looking for that's maybe different than your 7-part test that you use for a regular curriculum?
And that's a really, really valid point, Sunny. Our 7-point process, of course, looks for plot and character development and does it fit historically? And so it's a much more firmly vetted process than our summer readers, right? The summer reader process is more, did I enjoy this book? Did I find it was really entertaining? Did I like the plot? Did I think this was for example, I'm a huge mystery lover, right? So, and we have very few mysteries in the curriculum because they don't necessarily fit historically, right? So mysteries would be an example of a type of book that I think would be just perfect for summer readers. Or high adventure. I want our boys who maybe don't always love every book we carry, for them to just say, wow, that was the best book ever. Because that's the goal, right? That we get kids who love to read and they read a variety of genres, right? So, for example, I don't put any fantasy stories in our curriculum, except maybe A Wrinkle in Time, just because it's a Newbery medalist. But for the most part, a lot of kids do like that style, right? So it's one of those where if I find one I think is entertaining and engaging, I'll put one of those in. So it's a totally different way of even choosing books from our regular system. And it's basically just books that I thought, oh, this was fun, and I think kids might like it as well. So that's that in a nutshell. That's really what it was. Sorry, Sonny.
No, I think that's great. You mentioned fantasy. I know that's my daughter's favorite genre. And yeah, like you said, action adventure stories, my son, those really resonate with him. So I love that you bring up kind of those fun qualities that you may or may not have in the regular curriculum. What does that process look like, though? Where do you find these books? I know you read constantly, but how do you find them? How do they eventually become something you can purchase from Sonlight?
Mm-hmm. Well, I read a book a day. That is, I've done that probably for maybe my whole life. Even when I was a kid, I would take a flashlight to bed and finish a story at 1 a.m. just because I couldn't bear to go to bed without knowing how it ended. So it's basically just reading a whole ton of books. And then just keeping a list of which ones I think possibly would work in the summer program. And then it's, I usually own the books because that's easier for me to keep track of where they all are. And I'll put them in piles on the floor and say, okay, this feels like an elementary book reader, and this feels like this would work for middle school boys. And it's a lot of shuffling and juggling, and this is probably a little deeper topic, so I'll put that in with the high school kids, right? Or sometimes it's mostly just a feel. It's one of those where you kind of look at it and think, okay, I think a middle school boy would really love this sword fight in this one, or whatever, right? So it's setting it out and getting the little piles going. It's about 30 books that I collect because there's elementary boys, elementary girls, middle school boys, girls, high school boys and girls. So that's 6 sets, and each collection has between 4 and 5 books in it. So it's about 30 books to collect in a year. And some years you're really scrambling to find enough because there's just a lot. There might not be 30 books in a year that you've really liked that are actually really, really good stories. And it gets trickier than that, Sonny, because what happens is then we send our list to our purchasing agent, and she'll write back and say, oh, out of these 25 titles, 5 of them aren't available. They're either not being printed anymore. Books go out of print incredibly fast nowadays because you can get them on a Kindle or whatever, or they are only available in hardcover, which makes the price of our packages too much. So at the end, it is about 30 titles that have to be collected every single year. It's a big job.
Yeah. So, and I know we talked a little bit before we started recording that, some of our Sonlight programs have been around for a long time. So even when we update them regularly, you're not finding 30 new titles for an academic program every single year. So that takes a lot of time and effort that, maybe for those listening, they have no idea that it's such a process to identify those every year. But what qualities are you looking for in those books, so that if somebody does go into the library or bookstore with their kids, what should they be looking for? Whether, it's just a fun light read or not. What are those types of things that you're looking for as far as you mentioned character development and plot?
Mm-hmm.
I assume summer readers still have those things too. So
Yeah,
what are you looking for there?
They have to have all of those kinds of things because they have to be entertaining, right? A story with no antagonist is a very dull book, right? I think I've seen more lately that are just kind of vanilla, right? Where probably the biggest heartburn the family encounters is there was road construction on their way to the beach, which, maybe we've all dealt with it, but it doesn't feel like much of an antagonist in all honesty. So I think possibly we've gone either too creepy on one end or not deep enough on the other end, right? So you're looking for, I prefer stories where they contain boys and girls, right? So you have both sexes who are enjoying it, where they're solving some problem, because that's probably what all of life is, right? Figuring out how to get the dishwasher fixed or whatever problems might arise in our life, right? So kids that are actually solving something over the course of the book is something I think is really a good thing to be looking for. I think if it introduces you to another part of the world, even better, because I just think it's good for us to learn about other parts of the world. So there's a lot of different things I'm looking for. Was it an interesting story? Did I find it was, you don't want it to be too predictable either, right? You don't want to get to the end and go, I could see that coming. So partially we just want them to be entertaining in ways that are a little deeper than I think sometimes we choose. So I think a lot of books nowadays have more issues in them than I remember from the past. So one of the things that I personally do is I'll go to Amazon and read the 1-star reviews, because a lot of times they'll say, don't read this one because of this, and there are things that I actually agree with. So that would be a tip for finding books that you like on your own.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about finding books on your own, because I know a lot of our Sonlight kids become avid readers. They do get that love of reading because they're read to so much. But what about if you're in the library and they come over with their giant stack or the bookstore and can I get this? Can I get this? Can I get that? And you as the parent haven't read anything by that author, or maybe there's just too many books and you have not had the chance to pre-read them. How do you know if they're okay to hand over to your child, or what suggestions do you have? Should you pre-read them? Should you go to Amazon? What are your thoughts on that? Because I know my firstborn very much would come over with a whole stack, and sometimes it was overwhelming. Like, well, I don't want to tell you, no, you can't read, but I don't know if these are the quality books that I want you to read.
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of times I get a lot of samples from publishers, and rather than read some of them all the way through, because I have limited time like everybody, I'll go to the end of the book and read how it resolves, right? For me, it's important that the protagonist has grown through the course of the book. So if it ends up with the protagonist going off in some crazy direction, that's one I'll actually set aside. So for me, I would probably read the last couple of pages in the book and make sure it has a good resolution. And then honestly, I'd probably just pray and say, oh Lord, if there's something in this book I shouldn't have my child read, could you just point it out to me as I'm flipping through it? Because there's usually things in there that there's a lot in there nowadays that you just think, no, not crazy about that. So I don't know how to tell you anything better than that, Sonny, except to say on 1-star ratings is probably going to be your best friend.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And even like you said, reading the end, because I know for me, I love to read myself, and I've never wanted to skip ahead and ruin the ending in a book I'm reading on my own. But for my kids, if I'm not planning to read all those books, I think that's a great suggestion.
There was a study done, and they found that people that read the ending first liked the book more. So just as a data point, there you are.
Now I'm going to start reading all of my books. That's that's amazing. Too, because we talked about like fantasy, action, adventure, those are all genres that appeal to kids. But I know like in the regular curriculum, you include things like biographies and maybe some genres that are not commonly thought of as kid lit. Do you think there's value even in like summer reading, fun reading, and exposing your kids maybe to some other genres that they might not pick up on their own?
No, I think it's really a good idea. If you're looking for a good biography writer, for example, I can't remember exactly what his name is. It's something like Steve Scheichen, but he does some marvelous biographies that I think my grandson has read all of his. We carry his bomb in, I don't know, one of our courses, middle school or up.
Well, yeah, we'll look it up and put it in the comments.
But yes, if you can find biographies, I know I was talking to a dad the other day and he said, my mom read all of the biographies from YWAM, the ones we carry by the Dengies. That whole series would be a marvelous series to work through. They're very inspirational. They're very readable. They'd be available for everybody. I think finding authors that you like and just reading through their whole list. I know my daughter read through the entire Agatha Christie catalog. That'll keep you busy for a very long time. She probably wrote, I don't know, 80 books. I don't know, it was a lot. But for her, it was kind of like, let me check them all off. She's like,
yeah, I do all of them. I did the same thing with Nancy Drew in elementary. Yeah, I had to read them all. You can't read that series halfway done. So yeah, I think that's a great suggestion too, is finding your child's favorite authors. If they've read one book by that author and they like it, maybe check out some of those others as well. And so let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about the kids that like to read, right? That are reading so much, you can't keep them in enough good books. But what about a child who maybe struggles to read or they just don't enjoy it? It feels like a lot of work to them. Is there a way to motivate or inspire them a little more through this exposure to fun books and things that they might enjoy more?
A lot of times kids who wrestle with reading, they're usually very intelligent, but a lot of times too, it's tied to eye issues, right? So they just don't track very well. For those kids, a lot of times doing an audiobook, it makes a lot of sense. It just gives them a chance to gain the vocabulary and the flow of sentences and just the way a story progresses. And it's just a way to keep them very entertained. So get a Kindle or whatever, and headphones, and let them just listen. And they get to the point where some of these kids can actually listen at 3 times the speed and get through books very, very fast. But just, a win. It's a win. For those kids, though, I would also have them practice reading every day, because sometimes it's just developing that muscle. And I would pick books that have more white space on a page, right? So you want to have books that when you open it, you say, okay, this works because there's enough room for their eyes to breathe in between, because if it's tracking, that's where they're going to just really, really challenge. So just read a little bit every day and just let them listen to stories as much as possible, and just encourage them and say, wow, you're doing a great job. I'm so proud of you. And that's always the goal, right?
Yeah, I love that. No matter what level they're at, you can still read to them. I love the idea of audiobooks too. I think sometimes we don't think of that, or we think of it as cheating if, we're not reading the book ourselves, but then they're still absorbing that information. So I think that's such a great idea. Now let's talk about 2023. We talked about our summer readers. What is our plan this year, and why did we decide to do this?
This year, we are not offering summer reader packages. And mainly, I just ran out of time. So that's the main reason. But I think, too, we can put a positive spin on this. I know Sonlight moms have kids that love to read. So I just feel like, can we do something like Wikipedia, where as a community, we are sharing ideas. We are sharing, my child loved this book. Let's encourage kids to do this in another way. I think we have such a deep pool of readers in our community. I can't wait to see what people come up with. So it's one of those, it's going to be so much fun, but let's give it a whirl.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's different than it has been the last few years. But like you said, Sonlight kids love to read. Usually their parents love to read. So I always love when on social media or in our app, when somebody says, hey, I'm looking for suggestions for my daughter who's this age or my son who's this age. And the community does jump in with, oh, we loved these and these, and these are camp myths. And this is part of whatever series that we read in level, whatever, that they discovered the first book in their Sonlight package. So I absolutely agree with you. This is going to be a fun chance to see what our Sonlight community likes to read, to give you the chance to maybe discover some new authors or new books that you haven't read before. So what we're telling you, if you are listening, is that we want to hear from you. And we want to hear what books you and your kids like to read. So you can share those with us on social media, send us your photos, send us, your family together reading them. You can post in the Sonlight Connections app, or you can email us suggestions at main@sonlight.com. We're still going to do a reading challenge and a lot of fun things together this summer. But yeah, we want to hear from you about your books. Sarita, do you have any other suggestions maybe for somebody who loved your tips and tricks, but now they're thinking, oh no, I have to pick my own summer readers. What should I start with? Or what's the best way to find maybe the first summer reader for their kids this summer?
I maybe go to previous lists if you have not done all of our lists in the past. Do we have those someplace posted? Maybe we could post those.
Yes.
It might make sense on our Sonlight Connections to start a summer reader subset and allow people to post there and just basically say, my child's this age and this worked really well for her, or whatever we might want to say. Mm-hmm. I just think our parents are going to have the most ideas, and I'm actually looking forward to getting some new ideas for great books.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Send those suggestions because you might see them down the line in a future package. We're always looking for new books as well, because we do update our programs regularly. So yeah, if you have found something that you loved, share it with us. Same thing for you parents out there. I always love adding books to my list. So if you have found something that you really liked as the homeschool parent, send those to us as well. And we can make a list for kids and the parents that are homeschooling. So Sarita, as always, thank you for being here and sharing with us. You gave me great ideas myself, and I'm going to start reading my books backwards now, see if I like them more. But thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks, Sonny. Appreciate it.